We're steaming into chapter 2 now, right? And we were talking last week about our friend, what was his name, Lenny or Les? Les, right? And he was still, as an adult, he was saying, when is this ever going to stop, right? His parents were basically telling him that, he shouldn't have a life without them. And then they tried to guilt trip him, like, your mom's so depressed, and couldn't you take time off and come visit us, and all that. And then the therapist said, I told Les that it was typical for children who were forced to exchange emotional roles with their parents to carry into their adult lives tremendous guilt and an overdeveloped sense of responsibility. So that's this idea of a parentified child, It's when you think that you are responsible for other people's feelings and other people's whole life, You think it's your job to take care of somebody else. And it's actually, sometimes it's very subtle. You're not aware of it. But sometimes if you said, what if I gave that person some feedback, they asked for it and I gave it to them, but I think they hate me now. What if they hate me? What if they're not talking to me because I gave the feedback? What if and it's like, it was probably, they asked for it and it was maybe even a group exercise, and the person's still freaking out that you think you're a bad person and the person hates you and the person's angry at you and I didn't want to upset them, I shouldn't have said anything at all, and you're just spinning on that, because you think you're responsible for that other person's feelings, instead of being like, the healthy way would be like, they asked for feedback, it was part of the exercise, I gave it the feedback in a way that was appropriate. So if they're upset with me, that's, I'm sorry for them that they're upset, but it's not my job to caretake their feelings. So many times that's the problem. We think it's our job to caretake someone else's feelings, and it's not. And if we had a parent who was emotionally unstable, we are going to be attracted to people who are emotionally unstable, and we're going to try to caretake their feelings. It's just like a magnetic thing, and it's very hard. You will feel dead bored with somebody who's not very emotional. You will be like, oh my God, this is like watching paint dry. This is like hanging out with cardboard. I mean, it'll be so boring to you. But that's actually what a real relationship is. Not boring, but two emotionally stable people. Then you can actually have a real conversation. Not about how upset you make them or how much they love you or how much you love. All that stuff is just a wounded inner child. A real relationship is not like that. That's your own personal stuff to work through, But if two wounded people come together, that's what the topic is, usually. It's all emotional, And then you have to caretake. Usually it's not both caretaking each other's either. One person's the caretaker, and one person's the emotional one. And the anyway, on and on. But this is what our friend Les is going through. And when does it ever stop is a good question. So as adults, they often become trapped in a vicious cycle of accepting responsibility for what? Everything. Inevitably falling short, feeling guilty and inadequate, and then redoubling their efforts. So whatever they're doing to try to take care of whoever that person is, who's emotionally volatile in their life, it doesn't have to be a partner. It can be the same person who was emotionally volatile when you were a kid. It could be your mother. And you're still doing it, and you're, an adult. Like in Les's story, Or it could be your boss, or it could be your friend. It doesn't matter who that person is, but it's somebody who you feel responsible for their feelings. And you're adjusting your life, and you're sabotaging yourself, really, just to make sure that their feelings are taken care of. And the reason why is because, why? Not even in Samskara land, but like why as an adult? If you have this pattern, why do you think it's so important for you to not upset somebody in your life? Or to make sure that you, just say that you think you did upset them. Why is it important to do whatever you can to calm them down? Vilas? Oh, Kamala, were you going to say it? Let's hear some ideas.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that person as a child has learned to, you just explained, no? The person as a child has learned to take care of the parents' feelings, and as a child, this was a survival strategy. It was important that the feelings.
My question is, as an adult,
yeah.
I said not about the samskara. I'm saying as an adult right now, if I said Nyanshri is pissed off at you, and you're like, Nyanshri, what did I do? I'm sorry. Am I sitting too close to you? The AC, what? Why do you do that? Not the deep reason why. Why is it so important for you to try to alleviate her feelings in this moment?
Because I feel uncomfortable.
Good. Bingo. It's actually not about her feelings. And that's the whole funny riddle about the whole the whole thing, because it comes. That's why like codependency comes across that you're like so caring. Oh my God, you're upset. What can I do to like help you through it? It's not because I really care about you. It's because I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable because you're mad at me. So if I can say the right things and do the right things to calm you down, then you're not mad at me. It's not actually about you. And if you watch over time, if you're like, no, it really is, watch the person over time. If they're really, really, truly attuned to you, it's a whole different kind of behavior. And it's not just when you're mad or when they might have upset you. They're actually doing the whole thing from their discomfort. It's their discomfort samskara that they can't stand that you might be mad at them. Because why? Either their mother or father, back to what you were saying, the root of it is that their mother or father was emotionally volatile, right? And the mother or father would maybe hit them, beat them, whatever the thing was, and it may not have been that, emotionally abuse them or neglect them or something, so that's the reason why. Which is a very big punch when you realize that it's actually not about, when somebody's caretaking you, it's not about you really, even though they might seem they care so much about you. And if you're caretaking someone, it's really not about them. You're trying to nurture and comfort yourself. So that's why this inner child work is so important. If you're aware that, oh, wait a minute, it's my wounded inner child who's scared, let me nurture him or her first, calm the whole thing down, and then see if I really want to spend my Saturday night talking this person off the ledge who's emotionally triggered. Why is it my job? But your inner child is hardwired to think it's their job, probably. That's why you're doing it. It's very hard work. It's to convince your inner child it's not your job. You will feel very cold, heartless, mean, rude, and guilty for not doing it because you're so wired that way. Okay, so that was less. That was mostly from last week, right? And then continuing on to 36, top of 36. Driven as a little boy by the expectations of his parents, Les learned early that his goodness was judged primarily by how much he did for the rest of the family. Can anybody relate to that? Your goodness was measured by how much you did for your family, like your brothers, your sisters, your parents, maybe your extended relatives, right? You're a good boy or you're a good girl. Not just because of your inherent goodness. They didn't see that. It was if you did something for them. That's conditional love. Okay. So as an adult, his parents' external demands were transformed into internal demons that continued to drive him in the one area where he could feel some sense of worth, which was work. So isn't that interesting, that wording? So external demands turn into internal demons as an adult. The external demands as a child that your parents put on you turn into internal demons as an adult. What's another name for the internal demons?
Maybe self-criticism?
That's one type. What's the name of the whole category of internal demons?
Maybe the inner voice?
That's another way to call it, but it's your samskaras. The internal demons. They start off as external demands, but you internalize them. And yes, it's your inner voice, it's your self-criticism, but the name in Vedic psychology is samskaras. Not all samskaras are internal demons, but the ones related to external demands that were unreasonable, from parents, those turn into internal demons. And I think some of you guys know I'm writing another book right now, and the term we're using for them is called generational ghosts. And they possess you as adults. It's really interesting to flesh that concept out, They're internal demons, but they're also, you can think of it like a ghost that possesses you, because especially if you're in your therapy, if you're already in therapy or you've already been doing work on yourself, you can sometimes say like, why am I acting like that? This is so ridiculous. Like you stay a little bit removed from the actual storm that's going on of your emotions, right? But you can't stop the emotions. So you might be like, I'm so scared right now, but am I really? Like, why can't I stop being so anxious right now about that thing? Or so angry or so sad, So that's not the samskara. You're stepping out, you can see the thing going on, but you're like possessed by it. it makes you act in a certain way you don't want to act. So that's what we're calling the generational ghosts, because they didn't come from you. They came from your ancestors. Oftentimes not just your parents, but their parents, and it gets it's like an unwanted family heirloom, is how we're calling it. Generational ghosts and internal demons. So at least you can put a name to it and see it like that, because if you can see it like a ghost possessing you, that means you can also call the Ghostbusters and say, hey, get this ghost out of here. I don't want this ghost here anymore. Get it out. It wasn't born with me, and I don't want it possessing me anymore. Let's do something, they have some TV shows in the U.S. where the people, there's TV shows where they come, and you can call up and say there's a ghost, and they try to get rid of the ghost. They have many things they can do. So we have to think of it like a ghost possessing us. And the reason, there's many good reasons why, but another reason is that because then we see that it's not us. It's possessing us and it's using our body to act out these old generational traumas, basically, of samskaras. Interesting. Okay. So, internal demons that continue to drive him in the one area where he could find some sense of worth, which is work. So by working, he's avoiding actually, number one, his feelings, how he feels. That when you work, you can avoid your feelings. That's one good thing to do with work, one way that you can avoid your feelings. And another thing is, he's a good boy if he works. He's a good boy. And that's this internal demon, that's a samskara. Because he got probably some sort of praise for doing things for the family. So now he's doing things at work, and he doesn't know how to behave otherwise. So at work, he's probably like, oh, you did a good job on this, and you did a good job on that, and nice work. So that reinforces the samskara of the childhood, which is you're not good just for being. You're only good when you do, and when you do a lot for the whole family. Forget about how you feel. Forget about what you need. So that's Les's big samskara that's coming up here. Les had neither the time nor the appropriate role model for which to learn about the giving and receiving of love. He grew up without nourishment of his emotional life, so he simply turned off his emotions. Unfortunately, he found that he couldn't turn them back on again, even when he wanted to. So that part I just read, those two sentences, Babaji underlined in red. So he must have thought that was very important. I'll read it again. He grew up without nourishment of his emotional life, so he simply turned off his emotions. Unfortunately, he found that he couldn't turn them back on again, even when he wanted to. So I think I've told that story before of these children who've been in orphanages, They've been so neglected, that they can't even relate to a human being. If a human being comes, they don't want you to touch them, they don't smile back, they don't want comfort. That's not comforting to be touched, because the window of time when those samskaras needed to be made of making the initial attachment, that didn't happen. So when that window closes, you can't really, it's very difficult to go back and make that. Remember I was telling you guys some stories about some of the children I worked with at the hospital who had that reactive attachment disorder. It's called RAD. And they didn't get what they needed in that window of time. So now here I am telling the mother to hold her 8-year-old and hold her like she's an infant and look into her eyes and nurture her. And that was the most excruciatingly painful thing for this little girl. It went against all of her samskaras, which she had already locked her heart up and her feelings up in a very strong safe, so it's very, very hard to do it. Afterwards, it's not impossible, but first you have to be aware that that's what the problem is. And then you have to be open to all the work that it takes to get out of it, which is the exact opposite of what's comfortable for you. What's comfortable for you is to not feel anything, to not connect with anybody, to just stay in your head and to do your work and, not make any emotional connection. But if there's somebody who's very emotional, that's who you're going to be attracted to, because then they can do the emotions for you. It's a perfect attraction. One person's all the emotions and one person has no emotions, and they go together like that. And then they're almost like the perfect person, if they can balance each other, because one is like the head and the other one's the heart. But they're both too extreme. What we need is each person individually is their head and their heart, and then you come together balanced, But that's oftentimes not how it works. So for Les, he was a workaholic. He wasn't in touch with his feelings. So let's see what happens. I assured Les that I understood how frustrated and bewildered he felt about his inability to open up to anyone emotionally, but I urged him to go easy on himself. He hadn't had anyone to teach him those things when he was young, and they're pretty tough to pick up on your own. It would be like expecting yourself to play a piano concerto when you didn't even know where the middle C was, I told him. You can learn, but you've got to give yourself time to pick up the basics, to practice, and maybe even to fail once or twice. If I don't take care of their needs, who will? Dear Abby, I'm in a crazy family. Can you get me out of here? Hopeless. I'm just seeing, okay, so now we're going on to Melanie. So what I want to say about Les, just to end up here, is that, is that this therapist is saying, you be easy on yourself, and that's really important. To be compassionate. If you have that problem, if you can't really emote, actually what happens sometimes is, maybe you guys have heard of this or experienced it, but when I'm sometimes working with clients, they do something called disassociation. So what happens is we're getting into some emotional thing, and they're not even there actually. They're not even like in their body. They're like somewhere else. They cannot, in other words, the feelings are coming, but they can't, it's too painful to feel it. So they disassociate, they go somewhere else, So then we have to do things to ground them, use the 5 senses. Let's breathe some essential oils, come back into your body. And I'll sometimes say, where did you go? I can tell that they're not there. So I said, come on back, and we come, because when you're a child and something painful happens to you, for example, if you've been sexually abused, what are you going to do if you're 5 and somebody's sexually abusing you? You're just completely innocent and completely helpless. So what you do is mentally you check out. You go somewhere else. Some kids make something up, some story up in their head, or they just shut down from how they're feeling. It's too painful. So they shut it off. And also if your mother isn't there for you, if she's not attuning to you, when you need to be loved, when you need to be seen, you also shut off. So once that's shut off, who would want to go back to that excruciatingly painful place? So it's almost like something, like you twist it and you throw it, like you lock the key and just throw it, like it's very, very hard to get back in there. So this idea that practicing and being compassionate with yourself is really important, is to say it's not impossible, and you don't want to beat yourself up for it. It's possible, but you have to practice and be open to different techniques. Like some of my clients, I have them doing cuddle therapy, just to let somebody hold them and feel held by a loving person that's safe. That's one way. There's many ways to do it, and you just have to kind of keep trying and not be hard on yourself, because the younger the wound is that we're trying to work on. So this is like a core wound of, if you can't feel your feelings, that was probably the first 1 or 2 years of life. So that's a hard one to work with, because we're working with an infant or a baby. If some wound happened later, then we at least are working with your intelligence at that level. If you're 13 and something happened, like, okay, let's talk to your 13-year-old self. But if you're talking to a baby, what it needs more is touch. Touch and soothing words, and the sensation of being very nicely held, and nice smells, and a soothing voice, and that. So the younger the trauma happened, the more you have to kind of get in that way, with the more physical thing. And there's all kind of therapies for that. Okay. So now let's move to our friend Melanie. Okay. So if I don't take care of their needs, who will? So this is what Melanie wrote, or hopeless it says. But it's written by one of the clients named Melanie, which is, I'm in a crazy family. Can you help me get out of here? She was 13 when she wrote it. Now she's 42 years old. She's divorced, tax accountant. She came to see me because of severe depression. Although she was extremely thin, she was open and she talked easily about herself. I feel utterly hopeless all the time, like my life is out of control. I just can't get on top of things. I feel like I'm digging myself deeper and deeper into a hole every day. So when we're reading this book, I like to analyze it, as you can see, through the lens of Vedic psychology, right? And one of the things I'm always looking at is Samskaras. I keep bringing that up. And another one that's important, it's helpful, because if we practice it, you can see it more easily in yourself all the time and in others. And it makes a big difference if you can spot it. What's the mind type? What state of mind is her mind in? Do you think it's in sattva, in rajas, or in tamas? And why? She says, I feel mostly hopeless all the time, like my life is out of control. Isabel's got her hand up. What do you think, Isabel?
It's very definitely Thomas.
Okay, and why?
Because she is unable to feel anything. She's like totally depleted.
So
And Thomas is depleted.
Thomas is depleted, okay. So the characteristic of Thomas is depleted. That's why she's in Thomas?
No, she was wounded very early in her life.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop. So I'm asking, what are the characteristics of Thomas? So when we want to practice with that, not talking about her past, I'm saying right now, if she was a person in your life and she came to you, Isabel, you're right, she's in Thomas. But now I want to know why. Not from you, Isabel. I want someone else to tell me why is she in Thomas. Why? But you got it, Thomas. You pegged it. She's not in Sattva, right? She could be in Rajas, do you think? Isabel said Thomas, and I'm saying yes, but I want to hear why. Look at her description. From what can you see here and what she described matches the characteristics of Thomas. Vilas?
Erratic sleep. So it's not regulated. That would be sattva. Yeah, but it's uncontrolled. Erratic could also be rajas. Yeah.
Let's do a more obvious Tamasic one.
Okay.
Thomas is good sleepers. Thomas is good sleepers. That's the whole definition of Thomas.
True.
Go ahead, Malika.
I was thinking hopeless.
Hopeless. Why is that Thomas?
Because when you're hopeless, then you think you cannot act, means you're in stagnation. And Thomas is stagnation.
Okay, good. Thomas is stagnant. So when you're hopeless, that's Tamasic because you can't move. If you're hopeless, you're not going to move, right? Because your mind, whatever is happening in your mind, the feeling drives your behavior. So if the mind's hopeless, then what are you going to do other than lay around? Naroto?
Lack of enthusiasm. So
Lacks
the lady
enthusiasm.
doesn't seem to want to change something in her life and say,
Yeah.
I'll try this technique or I'll try this therapy. But she's like lost.
She's lost. And Thomas is lost and confused. But what is that related to in Thomas? Why is Thomas lost? Why is Thomas lost?
Isn't it associated to ignorance or to some,
Ignorance, right? Thomas is
lethargy?
dull. It's dark. It's heavy. You know, you can't see clearly. It's confused. So that's why there's no enthusiasm. It's like she's in a dark cave and she's wearing like a 200-pound jacket. She's just like, you know, I don't feel like I can go anywhere. I don't even know where to go. I just don't, you know, hopeless, helpless. Anything else? Look at what the description is. I feel like I'm digging myself deeper and deeper into a hole every day. Does that relate to Tamas? How? What's a Tamasic characteristic? Ananga Manjari?
Yes, this is also linked to Thomas because in Thomas, as Narottam said, this ignorance makes the people don't see the light, don't see the hope,
Yes.
don't see the end of the suffering.
Very good.
And that's what she's expressing by I'm digging myself deeper and deeper
Yeah.
into a hole every day. Yeah.
Very good.
You're led.
This is very good. So Tamas is dark, right? And it's in a deep hole, and you don't see the end of the suffering. So good, Ananga Manjari. And it's good that you said the opposite, right? She doesn't see the light. Which guna is light? Sattva. And what's rajas? If sattva is light and tamas is dark, what's rajas? Bright. Colorful, right? Like red and neon pink and all that. So she's definitely not feeling that. And she's not a ray of light. She's completely in darkness, you know? So if you can start getting familiar with when you hear people talking or you see how people show up, it can do as soon as you're like, oh, tamas, then you know so much. That tells you so much. And if you don't know, go look on our website. We've written so much about tamas, you know, and it helps you. It tells you as soon as it's only 2 lines or 3 lines, then you know, okay, tamas. That means a whole bunch of other things. I wouldn't ask that person to do something for you. And I wouldn't trust them on anything. And if I was feeling down myself, I wouldn't be asking them for any uplifting advice. There's a whole bunch of things of how you should relate to that person if they're in tamas. You know? Even as a therapist. You know, as a therapist, if somebody's in that mode, I'm not going to try to get them to actually do much because they can't. I'm just going to kind of try to validate their feelings and maybe slowly try to move them into rajas. You can't get somebody from tamas into sattva. They must get into rajas first, you know? So that's a slow process of, you know, sometimes I'll even say, can you just do some jumping jacks, you know? Can you just do some jumping jacks or just move the body a little? Forget about talking about it, because if you're trying to explain something to someone in tamas, they don't get it. It's just like, whoosh, you know? So you want to validate the feelings. Essential oils are really good. There's ones that are rajasic, that can move the mind a little. There's some exercises you can do. And if somebody's in rajas, you know, then there's a certain way you operate with them, and same with sattva, you know? So it's a good indicator that's all the time there. Good job, you guys. So I asked her to be more specific. She bit her lip, and then she turned away from me as she replied, "There's such an emptiness inside me." Another thing about tamas is they never can have enough. They're always feeling empty, and they're always taking. Tamas are takers. Give me more, give me more, give me more, and you don't love me, and it's not enough, and I want more of this, I want more of that, you know? And they're still, no matter how much you give, they're also not grateful. They're not going to say, wow, thank you, you've done so much for me. They're not going to say that. They're not going to feel that way. They're going to feel like, I need more, and if you can't give it to me, I'll try to get it from someone else. You know, if they can even motivate to do that, or they'll just keep asking you because it's the easiest, you know. So there's an emptiness. I don't think I've ever felt connected to anybody my whole life. How do you feel connected to a person? What are the ingredients to feel connected to another person, do you think? Because that's amazing what she said, right? She's never felt connected to anybody in her whole life. So what are the ingredients to truly feel connected to another person, do you think? Kamala, were you going to say something?
She's not able to have empathy for others, and she cannot attune.
Yeah,
because
empathy.
She's self-centered.
Yeah. If you're only worried about yourself and feeling for yourself and feeling I'm empty and you're completely just worried about you, how can you make a connection to somebody else? And also if you're in a dark hole, if you're in the dark, then how can you even see somebody else? Which means, like what you said, Kamala, empathy, attunement. You know, one of the things I try, sometimes, it doesn't work that often, but sometimes I'll try to encourage my clients who are in tamas to say, go do something for somebody else. And they'll think I'm crazy. And I'll say, listen, there's a lot of people who could probably use your help. Go do something for somebody else. And they'll be like, what? Well, nobody does anything for me. I'm like, well, because one of the ways you connect to people is through giving. And then reciprocation starts. But tamas is always waiting around for you to give to them. They don't initiate, you know? They don't initiate giving. You know, and then when you give, then it's never enough. So that's another way to start getting out of tamas, is to think about somebody who's maybe in a situation that could use some of your help in some way and offer that. Instead of always thinking, well, how can this person give me more? They're not giving me enough. That's how relationships, good ones, work. Reciprocation, you know, and that comes from empathy. Is you have to feel, okay, there's another person here who might need something. They're not just an ATM machine for me, you know. They actually might have some needs too that would be nice, that you give to them and they give to you. I've been married twice and I've lived with several guys, but I just can't find the right one. I always pick either lazy bums or total bastards. Then of course, it's up to me to set them straight. I always think I can fix them. I lend them money, I move them into my house. I've even found jobs for a couple of them. It never works, but I never learn. They don't love me. See? They don't love me, no matter how much I do for them. One of these guys hit me in front of my kids. Another took off with my car. My first husband played around. My second husband was a total lush. Lush, played around means had sex with other women, and a lush means alcoholic. Some track record. So this is, there's a lot to unpack here, but if you can see how she says that I always think I can fix them, and here's the thing she does, right? And then she also said somewhere that she has to set them straight. Where was that? I lend them on but I never learn. They don't love me no matter how much I do. Okay? So basically, she can't pick the right one. She always picks the lazy bums or the total bastards. So basically, okay, then of course it's up to me to set them straight. So what happens with this dynamic, this is a codependent dynamic that's being described, but this is also the fluctuation between the gunas of tamas and rajas, right? So she's in tamas a lot of the time, but that's not like perpetual. So what happens is she probably gets excited at the beginning of the relationship and she's in rajas, passionate, she meets a new guy, and then she gets angry at him, and then she has to set him straight, and she puts a lot of this passionate rajasic energy to set the guy straight. But for the extent of the rajas that you, just say you're like 10 out of 10, rajas, very passionate and lecturing and, I'm going to explain it to him until he gets it. To the extent that you're that much rajas, eventually that, you can't just throw a ball up and it perpetually is going up. So to the extent that you're a rajas, that extent you're going to end up in tamas, completely down in the dumps, like -10. So sometimes when people are in tamas, I also try to remind them, well, you've been in rajas before, because you weren't born like this in tamas, So that's also this idea of noticing that dynamic, that the rajas, tamas always is the natural balancer. It's not that sattva comes in and balances you. Sattva we have to work for. Basically it's rajas and tamas, And then if you stay in tamas too long, sometimes, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, if you've been sick or something and you're in bed, eventually you're just like, I have to get up and do something. Then, rajas is back. You've kind of like recharged your batteries. So that dynamic is always going on. And even here you can see it in this thing with her, And then she's like, oh, forget it, I just can't do it, And she's also not in a sattvic state of mind. So how is she going to set the guy straight? How is she going to pick a guy that's good for her? Because her samskaras are driving her, So it's a probably a very depressing situation, because she's had a lot of different partners and it's not working at all. Without realizing it, Melanie was describing the classic behavior of a codependent personality. Originally, the term codependent was used specifically to describe the partner of an alcoholic or drug addict. Codependent was used interchangeably with the term enabler, someone whose life was out of control because he or she was taking responsibility for saving a chemically dependent person. So, that's an important thing. A lot of people don't know what codependent is, and they'll say things like, they'll define it in their own words of what it is, but actually it's, you can say it's a people pleaser, but basically how I describe it is, if you are doing things for other people at the expense of your own feelings and your own needs. It's okay to take care of other people and do nice things for other people. That's wonderful that you have a caring heart. But if you're doing it and you're sacrificing what you need, you're sabotaging. I mean, it might be a one-off that you did something, but if you have a pattern of doing that where you're always selling yourself short, that can be a codependent pattern. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that your parent was an alcoholic when you were growing up. It could be that they just weren't there for you in some way, emotionally, maybe physically too, So, and the thing about the enabler as well is the person who's the alcoholic or the drug addict or the emotionally volatile person, whatever their problem is, the enabler doesn't make boundaries, They don't tell you, no, you have to stop drinking, or no, that's, go see a therapist, you're like totally triggered now, or whatever the thing the parent is doing. Like a kid's not going to tell the parent. So they get conditioned in childhood to just enable the whole thing that's going on in order to get mommy's love or daddy's love. And then they just repeat it in adulthood. And they'll end up with a partner who has bad behavior, we could say, putting it mildly, like the description of these guys, they have bad behavior, and she enables it until it gets out of control. Like, the husband's having sex with other women, and then the second husband was drinking alcohol all the time. So, and then one of the guys hit her in front of her kids. That is so extreme, So maybe it ended at that point. But a lot of the codependents will still stay after that. They'll just say, he was having a bad day, Somebody was a real jerk to him at work, it's like, And so they even enable that. And then they tell the kids, they'll make something up, and the kids will then learn to also be codependent enablers as adults, So, okay. So, but in the past few years, the definition of codependency has expanded to include all people who victimize themselves in the process of rescuing and being responsible for any compulsive, addicted, abusive or excessively dependent person. That's a pretty broad definition. Now we're not talking about just drugs and alcohol, right? Like, just even think excessively dependent person. What does that mean? It's somebody who is not taking control of their own feelings. So they need you to manage their feelings. When they're triggered, they can't feel better until we talk, because now you've got to manage my feelings, you know? That's excessively dependent. There should be nobody that that's waiting for you to process their feelings with you. You know, it's exhausting when you keep getting pulled in. Actually, that's how my ex-husband was. He was always triggered. And I always had, I mean, of course, I'm a therapist, so that was just a perfect match for me, you know? But I'm like, I should only keep it to the day job, not to my personal life. But that's how it was. He was always triggered by every, you know, the way the wind blew. And I'm always trying to like enable and make it all better for him. But I could never, you know, I could never do it. It was so exhausting when somebody's, and then he's always like, we have to talk. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sick of talking about this, you know? It's like, okay, you're right, I don't love you, you know, whatever the thing is. It just gets really exhausting when you're the one who's been made to be the bad, you know, the demon, you know, when it's not you, but that person needs you. And then when you say the right thing, all of a sudden things are better for 5 minutes. Then they're triggered again by the next thing. So that's called this dependent. You're highly dependent on another person for your feelings, you know, for your feelings to be okay. Excessively dependent person, right? There's other things like compulsive, you know, that's a tricky one. You don't realize it sometimes. Compulsive could be somebody who's like, what is this thing called now in the US? CrossFit. One of my cousins is really into CrossFit, which is like this thing, you go to the gym and you have to compete, and now you have to become who can lift the most weights and do the most circuits. It's some very, like, it sounds cool, but you can get obsessed or compulsive about anything. So she's completely into that. And then her brother, which is also my cousin, he's now into the, what is it called? Not now, he's been doing it for a while, the Ironman. So now he's like running all around the world, you know, who can go. But the thing is, that's fine if you're 20, but they're in their, you know, they're almost 40 probably by now, their brother and sister, but like they have kids. You know, so it's not all about you being the Iron Man when you're 35, because you have a little boy and a little girl and hopefully a job, and you have other things. You should be focusing on your kids and what they want, because Iron Man takes a lot of your energy to become the Iron Man. I forgot how many, like running 100 miles. I mean, it's a big undertaking. So that means that your energies and your focus is not on your children. It's on yourself, you know? So that's why I'm saying some of these words, it's just written as one word and a comma, but it's very deep. If somebody's compulsive, then what happens is you're like, okay, honey, I got it. It's okay. I'll stay home with the kids. You're going to be gone for the next 52 days for Ironman? It's all right. I've got the kids. But it's like, well, wait a minute. Aren't you also working? And taking care of 2 kids is a lot. And what about your parents who are aging and they need your help? I mean, so one of the partners, it's not really equal in their responsibilities, but the enabler, the codependent enabler, lets that person continue with like their compulsion. And says, it's okay, you can go, you know, but they're getting so burned out, you know, the enabler. Or trying to rescue, you know, trying to rescue somebody. I mean, it doesn't have to be somebody who's an addict. It can be somebody who chronically can't just keep it together with their finances. You know, they keep spending money recklessly, and then you're like, oh, it's okay. It's okay, here's another 100. Oh, you need 1,000 this time? No problem. You know, like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's not so obvious in the ways that we might be enablers in our lives. You have to really think, you know, because oftentimes we didn't have good boundaries. Our parents didn't teach us good boundaries. So we just think I'm being a good friend, or they didn't have anywhere else to go, and now they're living with me, or I gave them my car, and it's like, what? Like, sometimes I hear these stories, and I'm like, but you can just tell yourself you're being a good boy or good girl, or you're being a nice person. You know, and you don't realize you're actually perpetuating the issue that person has. You're just strengthening their unhealthy samskara when you do that. Because they're getting the message, oh, I can still behave like this because so-and-so is giving me the money, or giving me the time, or managing my feelings for me, or giving me the space, the house, or whatever it is, you know. Okay. Even abuse works like that. If you have a partner and they're physically abusive to you, it takes on average 7 times for the abused wife to actually leave and really stay gone. So then the guy will say, oh, you know, I was having a bad day, or whatever the reason was. Or, no, you made me really mad that time because you shouldn't have, you know, I told you I wanted, and you didn't get it from the grocery store. So you deserve that you deserve to be thrown on the stairs. you know, because you told me you're going to get milk, and I really like my milk because you know I'm going to get heartburn if I don't get it, something like that. And then the woman will agree and say, you're right, I know, my bad. And then he'll also give her some roses and kiss and make up, you know. And then 6 more times, you know, she's getting abused like that before she might say, that's enough. But then it doesn't mean, what's that saying? Out of the frying pan into the fryer. It's not like she's learned something and now the next guy she's not going to do it with. He might abuse her in a different way, maybe not physically, maybe emotionally, but it's a very hard thing to get out of your samskaras, you know. And it's almost like the core program in you would be that, and it wouldn't be that of being with an physically abusive person. It might be more like that of being with somebody who doesn't see you emotionally, or that program of you being the enabler. Sometimes it can be broad like that, and that's why it's hard to catch it. Because it's like, oh no, I'm with a different partner this time. You know, the first guy, he was having sex with all my friends, but the second guy, he didn't do that, he was great. It's like, no, he's the same guy, you know, it's just different, looks different. This second guy's drinking alcohol every night, and the first guy had sex with all your friends, but what do they have in common? The samskara shows what they had in common. What do you think they had in common? By her samskara being attracted to the first guy who, let's say, had sex with her friends while they were married, and the second guy who was drinking alcohol like every night. A lush means drinking excessively. Nyantri, what do you think the samskara shows that made her attracted to both of those?
My guess is that they both were unavailable
Yes,
for her.
Exactly. So unavailable can show up in 100,000 different ways. Just remember that. Somebody being unavailable in your life can show up in so many different ways. But the core samskara might not be the alcoholic father. Do you see what I'm saying? That's there. But what we get comfortable with is any person we can be with who's going to be emotionally unavailable to us. It's like, oh, this is so comfortable. You know? Damn painful, but I know how to deal with this. So you got it. That would be how it works. And that's why she can't figure out why she's either picking the lazy bums or the total bastards. What do they have in common? They're not there for her. They're not emotionally attuned to her, because if they are, they're not going to act like that. And unfortunately, she's not going to be attracted to them. Okay. So Melanie was attracted to very troubled men. She believed that if she could just be good enough, if she could give enough, if she could love enough, worry enough, help enough, cover up enough, that means like lie for them or hide the things that they're doing that are wrong, and get them to see the error of their ways, then they would love her. So this is the codependent thing that they do. So one thing is basically just say yes to everything and agree to everything. But then also, like it's kind of like a passive-aggressive thing that the codependent does, try to educate them and explain to them the error of their ways. You know? And I always say to the codependents, I'm like, you've been in therapy now for 5 years. Has it worked with me when I try to explain anything to you? If it did, let's meet one time for an hour. I'll just tell you all the things and you change, presto. It doesn't work. First of all, you want to be here, and even you want to be here, and I'm saying the same thing over and over, you know. How are you changing? It takes a long time to change, because it's not that you earnestly don't want to change, but you're going against all your conditioning to change. And that's somebody who wants to change. Therapy is damn hard, you know. But now you're going to pick somebody who doesn't want to change, they're not even in therapy, and you're going to like have a talk with them? How's that going to go? Just think of how crazy that is. That's a 3-year-old inner child who also still believes in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and Easter Bunny. That's the mentality of somebody who thinks you're going to explain something to somebody else and they're going to change. If you realize that, life can get already a lot easier, because then you don't try to change anybody. Then you adjust yourself and go, okay, we've got a tamas here, we've got an alcoholic here, we've got an enabler here. You can see, and then you adjust yourself. Like, why would I engage with that person? I mean, if you're in a community with them or in a family with them, obviously you engage, but not to the level where because sometimes you feel like you have a very close bond with someone, but it's only because it's what's called a trauma bond. You can research it. A trauma bond is when you have a trauma and they have a trauma and they match. And it feels almost like it's ecstatic in a way. It feels very, very magnetic attraction. When your wound matches their wound. I don't mean match like you both had an alcoholic father. I mean it's like the opposites attract. You know, when they have something that they need and you have that certain thing that you can give, you know, that is like that. And that's that trauma bonding. You know, and it never ends good, but it's very, very hard to see it when you're in it because you think it feels like love because it feels so strong. It feels so strong because you're finally, your inner child is going to finally change dad, who was never there for you. Dad, i.e. my husband. You know, or, you know, your inner child's finally going to get mom to connect to your feelings. So your inner child is holding on so tight to that emotionally unavailable woman who's never going to change. Maybe by God's grace or her own work, but not by you explaining to her that she's X, Y, or Z, or explaining to him. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing if the world worked like that? If you could just explain to someone you're like that, and if you could just change these 3 things, here's the checklist, and we'll see you tomorrow, but we'll have a great lunch together. If you can just adjust yourself in these 3 ways. But that's how people operate, and it's so funny to watch it, you know? Not funny, but it's like when you understand what's going on, you're like, oh, it's like a little 3-year-old being like, you don't do that. And it's like, okay, you know, but the other person, I mean, we've all had it done to us, right? How does it feel when somebody tells you something about how they want you to change? How do you feel when somebody tells you, yeah, this thing about you I don't like very much, and I want you to change that thing. Here's how let me tell you all my feelings about how you upset me when that happens, when you do that. So if you could change in this way for me, that would be really make my day. Make me love you more. How do you feel? Do you like it when somebody tells you? Why don't you like it? You feel triggered, right? What do you feel? Triggered has a whole host of feelings. What are the feelings?
One feeling is angry.
Angry. It's like, who are you to tell me how to change? Who are you to tell me how? Oh, I'm sorry. You have the book on the perfect way to be, and you're the perfect person. So I've got to follow you, right? You get pissed off. Like, why are you telling me how to change? What else? Any other feelings? Yanshri?
Disrespected.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It kind of like you're criticizing me. You're judging me, and I feel disrespected by you. Yeah. Any other feeling? You said triggered, Kamala. What's your triggered feeling? Is it angry, disrespected, or?
Humiliated.
Humiliated, yeah. It can be humiliating too when somebody holds it up and is like, you're like that. It's like, oh God. Even if they're right, who wants to hear that? It's like you're just walking on the street on a busy city and somebody runs and pulls your pants down and your butt's hanging out. You're like, oh my God, you know? That's so embarrassing, you know? And then you want to push them away, you know? It's like inappropriate. I don't want you to expose me like that. Exposed, humiliated, angry. So then in that mood, just think of those feelings. We've said humiliated, angry, what was the other one? Disrespected. Do you think somebody who's feeling angry and humiliated and disrespected is going to change? What are they going to do? What will they do? When you feel angry, humiliated, and disrespected, what will you do?
Retaliate.
Retaliate. And also you say, no, I'm not going to. I mean, you probably say something rude back to them. What are you going to say, Naroto?
We would probably attack.
Attack.
In response.
Yeah, you
I'm
slap
like
back.
this, you're like this.
Yeah, you think, oh yeah, exactly. So you say something back to them, right? And then how will it affect your behavior? So you, in the moment, you like say it back. But then if you're like, oh, you know, they would like it that I, whatever, make it up. I wear a green hat every day because, you know, your hair has a problem. I don't like your hair, so you should wear a green hat every day because I like green. And you look stupid without a hat. Because you're, you know, whatever, on and on, right? And so they tell you this whole thing and you're pissed off. You're like, I'm not going to wear a green hat every day. I like my hair, you know? This is my personal style. Who is she to tell me, right? So then, do you see what I'm saying? You double down even harder. You even stronger, you fight for how you were. In other words, you're trying to tell the person, you know, you should really stop drinking alcohol. It's not good for you. Let me tell you about health. Do you know about Ayurveda? Let me tell you how to affect brain cells. It kills your brain. So you go on explaining, and they're like, F you. So what do you think they're going to do that night? They're going to drink more. And they're going to curse you the whole time. And try to think of what they can do to, you know, retaliate. Sometimes they do it in the moment, and sometimes they build up so much resentment. They're like, oh, just wait. Yeah. She thinks she can tell me. I'm going to wait for her boyfriend to come over next time and totally make her look like a fool. I'm going to tell a story when she did X. You know, they don't forget. Anybody, not they, any of us don't forget when somebody, you know, tries to tell us how we should change. even if they say it with sweet words, the ahankara doesn't like that. We all think we're doing good how we are. And if somebody, even if you're asking somebody, I've said this like 100 times, but the therapist has to be very careful what they say in terms of how you can change. That's why I'm saying you could do therapy in 1 hour. It's not that the therapist is blind, but it's too shocking for the ahankara. You're going to cardiac arrest, you know? Unless they want to do therapy in the emergency room, check yourself out and have the therapist just come for 1 hour while you're on life support and be like, let me tell you, here's what it is, you know? But otherwise, you have to go very slow. You have to be very gentle. The client has to trust you, you know? They have to trust that, okay, the therapist gave me this thing, that worked. Okay, I think maybe I could try the next thing. That worked, yep. Okay, the essential oil, I can go with that. And chocolate? Yeah, I can do that too, you know? Now we try to turn it up a notch. Can you try this thing? So slowly over time, you trust the therapist and you get some successes. But it's a long process, right? And some of you know that. You've had the experience of getting success in therapy. So that I'm saying, look at the therapeutic model. And now you think without any, you know, you're not a therapist yourself probably, but then you're going to tell, I can't even tell my own family members. They all know I'm a therapist. They don't want to hear anything from me. You know, I'm just like the auntie, sister, daughter person. That's it. Vedic psychology, all my knowledge out the window. I just show up and I'm like, what's for dinner? That's all. And let me play with your kids. That's it. So even that, you know, that's what I'm saying. And so you have to see your identity in that person's life. You know, so if they have hired you and said, please tell me what's wrong with me, that's a rare person. And still, I wouldn't tell them the whole enchilada. I'd just share like a little bit, see how they handle it, see if they use it in their life and apply it. And if they come back for more, just give a little bit more. It's like that. But we don't do that. The people we quote unquote love the most, we're trying to change the most. Does that really love them? If we really love them, why can't we just love them as they are? Like as they are right now. But if they could just change, no, not just that one thing. That's what I'm saying. If you're complete and whole, you don't need somebody to change for you. You can just love them exactly as they are. It doesn't mean that you get caught in their trap and all that stuff, because you don't need to get in that trap with them because you don't need them. You can be loving to them, but you don't get in a deep entanglement with them because you don't need anything from them. Okay, so our friend Melanie. So she was attracted to troubled men, and she believed that if she could just be good enough, she could give enough, love enough, worry enough, help enough, cover up enough, and then here's the part that I was talking about, and get them to see the error of their ways, then they would love her. So that's the thing, it's codependency is wrapped in a very manipulative cover that we don't realize. We think, oh, that person's so nice, they're so caring, but there's always that more subtle part of them trying to get you to change so they can feel comfortable, in a nutshell. But they didn't, right? So they never loved her, and they never saw the errors of their ways. The kind of needy, self-centered men whom she picked were incapable of love. So instead of finding the love she so desperately sought, what did she find? Emptiness. She felt used. I discovered that the term codependent was not new to Melanie. She had first come across it when she attended a meeting of Al-Anon, a 12-step program for family members of alcoholics. During her marriage to her alcoholic husband, that's what she called a lush, the alcoholic husband, she was certain that she wasn't a codependent. She just had bad luck with men. What state of mind are you in? If probably a therapist told her she was codependent and she said, I'm not codependent. I just have bad luck with men. Are you in sattva, do you think? Rajas? Or tamas and why? Kamala? You're already mouthing it.
Is definitely tamas.
Okay, because?
Because she doesn't think that she needs to understand something.
Mm-hmm.
She's thinking that is by herself she already knows,
Mm-hmm.
and she cannot accept good advice or instruction.
Mm-hmm.
learning
She
something
doesn't think
new.
it applies to her. So she has no insight.
No
Tamas
insight.
is zero insight. Even if the person's telling you, you're like this, and even if it's a therapist saying, this is what your problem is, this is what you have, I'm diagnosing you with this, the person doesn't think they have it. They don't even bring it up. I've had people in therapy for years, they don't bring up the diagnosis I've given them. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to hit you on the head with it. This is what you have. But we can talk about other things. That's tamas. It's too dull, it's too heavy, it's too much in denial. Denial is tamas. And she's feeling used. She's feeling used. That's another common codependent thing. Why would a codependent feel used? Naraka?
Probably because there is no reciprocation, and when they do something, then they do not receive the expected outcome in return, and then they start reclaiming their part.
Very good. So then that means they weren't really giving, right? That's why they feel used. So if it's a sattvic person in a state of sattva, they're giving, but they're not expecting something in return. They're just giving because that's their nature, is to give, right? But if they're in this like rajasic mode or tamasic mode, they're giving with this expectation of something in return, and when they don't get it, they're like, oh, I feel so used. It's like, you were the one giving all the stuff. You were giving all the love, and you stayed up late at night, and you gave yourself away, basically. So how could you be, what do you mean you're used? You can only be used if you put yourself out to be used. You know what I mean? That means she didn't make the boundaries. And she overextended herself, probably to the point of hurting herself, sabotaging some things that she needed. She gave away money, she exposed her children, to these horrible men that they'll never forget. It'll definitely affect them in their adulthood. So all these things, and now she's like, they used me. It's like, they didn't owe you anything. You chose to do all that. But see, the codependent always also plays the role of the victim. Look what he did to me. He used me. It's like, oh, you were just like a floating duck on the water, you didn't do anything? No, you're not an innocent. I always have to say, like, you're not innocent here. Look, what's your part of the story? What did you do to put yourself in a position to get used? You were offering all that stuff, Codependents also expect you to read their mind. Like, oh, he should have known. He should have known. Why should he have known? Is it also his job to bring you to the bathroom and wipe your bottom? And as an adult, no. He shouldn't know when you have to do poo-poo, and he shouldn't know what you're thinking and what you're feeling. That's your job. But the codependent puts it's on everybody else. He should have known I didn't have any money. Why is that his job? It's your job to say, I don't have any money, or I'm not going to give you any money, I'm saving it for something else. But the codependent's always the victim. And that's the tamasic one. Tamasic is always the victim. He did it to me. It's like, it takes two to tango. And the therapy is about owning your part. Seeing what did I do to create that. Now the time here is, I still have some time, or this clock says 7:34.
Yeah, it's 7:30 now.
7:30 now, okay. Thank you guys for listening. Good talk. Thank you for participating, those of you who did. And I hope it wasn't too heavy, too tamasic. We did some sattva. We got some good insights. And I'll see you next week, okay?